She stood there shaking, her uniform still damp from the rain, while the hotel manager pointed at her like she was dirt. "Pack your things, Lena. You're done here. I don't want to hear excuses." But Lena hadn't done anything wrong. She was being fired because a wealthy guest's girlfriend didn't like the way she existed in the same room. That was her crime, existing. And just as Lena's voice cracked, just as she swallowed the last of her pride, the man in the tailored black coat stepped forward. Quiet, calm, watching everything. He said only one sentence. "She's coming with me." And in that moment, everything changed. Before we go any further, take a second to do this with me. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I love seeing how far our stories travel. And if you're new here, make sure you subscribe, not to support the channel, but because these stories only get deeper from here, and I don't want you to miss what happens next. All right, let's go back. Because none of this started at the hotel. It started 3 days earlier. 3 days earlier, Lena Brooks was already tired before the sun came up. The lobby floor of the Hale Regency gleamed like polished ice, and she could see her own exhaustion staring back at her in the reflection. She tied her apron, pinned her hair, and reminded herself that her brother's medication refill was due on Thursday. That thought alone kept her moving. The hotel was quiet in the mornings, the kind of quiet that feels expensive. Crystal chandeliers, marble pillars, the faint scent of lemon polish, everything reminding her she didn't belong here, only served here. Her cart squeaked as she pushed it down the hallway, careful not to let it scrape the walls. Mistakes cost money. Mistakes cost jobs. Lena worked silently. She always had. She wiped, folded, emptied, replenished. She kept her head down. Guests barely looked at her. Some didn't look at her at all. She wasn't offended anymore. She had learned to become invisible. But invisibility didn't pay enough, and time was running out. The doctor had made that clear last week. She was in the staff elevator when Jada rushed in, out of breath. "You heard?" Jada asked, lowering her voice. "He's back." Lena blinked. "Who?" "The owner." A whisper, as though saying his name out loud would summon lightning. Grayson Hale. Lena had never seen him. Not really. He didn't live in the hotel full-time. He came and went quietly. The kind of man who could move a room without speaking. The kind of man the hotel was practically built for. "Penthouse level only today," Jada warned. "Don't stare, don't talk, don't breathe near him if you can help it." Lena almost smiled. Noted. She didn't plan to see him anyway. She wasn't assigned to that floor. She had rooms on the 8th level today, business travelers, suits, couples who left champagne glasses on the nightstand and lipstick stains on the towels. At noon, she clocked out for a 10-minute lunch. She sat alone in the employee break room, half-eaten peanut butter sandwich in hand, scrolling through medical bills she didn't have the courage to open fully. She stared at the payment deadline. Her stomach tightened. 10 minutes ended quickly. Back to work. She knocked softly on room 812, then entered when no one answered. The curtains were open, letting the city pour in through glass. Buildings stacked like stories waiting to be told. She began stripping the bed when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned. A woman in diamonds stood in the doorway, glaring. "You're in here too long," the woman snapped. "Do you think we don't see people like you, lingering for whatever reason you people linger?" Lena froze. "I'm just doing my job." The woman scoffed, threw her purse on the bed and walked out. Lena exhaled, slow and controlled, then leaned over to pick up a glass from the table. Her hand trembled. Just a little. Just enough to show she was tired. She didn't know it yet. But in 2 days, she would be wearing diamonds of her own, and the city outside the window would be calling her name. She stared at the paper twice to be sure. Penthouse floor, Suite PH1, Grayson Hale's private residence. She felt Jada's eyes on her as they both read it. "That's a mistake," Jada said. The supervisor shook her head. "No, Special request. She goes. Lena didn't remember breathing after that. She simply nodded, pushed her cart toward the elevator, and kept her steps steady, steady, steady. The higher the elevator climbed, the quieter it became. The hotel floors below held voices, footsteps, laughter. Up here, there was only silence. The penthouse door was already open when she arrived, not wide, just enough to show someone had left it that way on purpose. She knocked anyway. No answer. She stepped in. The room wasn't just large, it was a world. Floor-to-ceiling windows opened to the skyline. The lake stretched like silver glass in the distance. Everything was clean, sharp, controlled, black and steel, with soft light falling across a white marble floor. Lena began the routine: straighten cushions, dust the bar counter, check the bathroom amenities, silence and precision. She was polishing a glass when she felt it. Someone was standing in the room. She didn't turn right away. She finished what she was doing, set the glass down gently, then lifted her head. Grayson Hale was leaning against the doorway. He wasn't what the rumors described, not cold, not cruel, just quiet. A man who watched everything all at once and said very little. His suit was dark, his hair slightly undone, like he'd run a hand through it more than once. His expression didn't shift when their eyes met. "You're new," he said. His voice was low, unhurried, the kind that didn't need volume to be heard. "I've been here for almost a year," Lena said. Something flickered in his eyes, not surprise, just recognition. He stepped further into the room. "No perfume," he said, observing the lack of scent. "Most staff wear strong floral scents. You don't." Lena instantly wondered if she had made a mistake. "I can't afford perfume." Silence, not awkward, just real. Grayson nodded once, as if confirming something to himself. He walked past her and placed a leather folio on the table. When he looked at her again, his expression had shifted, measured, deciding. "What are you doing this weekend?" he asked. Lena blinked. "Working." "Not anymore." She didn't understand. He didn't explain. He opened the folio, slid a piece of paper toward her. She didn't touch it. There were numbers on it, enough to wipe out every medical bill she owned, enough to change her life. "You'll accompany me to an event," he said, "as my wife." Her breath caught, but she didn't step back. She didn't laugh. She didn't accuse him of mocking her. She just looked at him, and he looked back, as if he already knew her answer. "You'll be safe," he added quietly. He didn't say why he chose her. He didn't say what was at stake. He simply waited. And in the space between them, the city lights glowed, and the world shifted. Lena's voice was barely a whisper. "Okay." One moment she was standing across from him, the contract between them like a live wire. The next, she was back in the staff hallway, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. The paper was folded carefully inside her pocket, as if touching it too roughly would make the moment vanish. She sat in the nearly empty break room, the vending machine humming beside her. Jada leaned across the table, staring at her like she was holding a bomb. "He asked you to do what?" Lena opened the paper and slid it across the table. Jada's eyes widened slowly. "Lena, this is not babysitting somebody's dog. This is powerful people territory. You don't go with them. You get eaten." Lena knew. Lena understood. But she also saw her brother's name at the top of the medical bill, saw the due date, saw the red ink. "What if it's the only way?" Lena whispered. Jada didn't argue again. Because sometimes survival isn't noble, it's just necessary. That evening, a black car arrived at her building. Not flashy, not loud, just impossibly sleek and quiet. The driver stepped out, opened the back door, and waited. Lena climbed in. Grayson was already there. No music, no small talk, just the soft sound of the city outside and the low, warm glow of the car's interior lights. He handed her a slim envelope. "This has everything you need for the weekend," he said. "Flight details, dress fittings, Public schedule. Lena nodded. He studied her profile, not in judgment, more like he was confirming she was still the same person he had seen in the penthouse. You don't have to do this, he said. Yes, she answered. I do. He didn't ask why. She didn't explain. There were untouched stories in both of them. The car stopped at a private entrance behind an upscale boutique. Soft amber lighting, gold-trimmed windows, the kind of place Lena had only ever seen in magazines. Inside, Brielle Hale waited, tall, poised, with warm eyes that carried none of her brother's guarded distance. So this is her, Brielle said, walking closer with an easy smile. Good. I was hoping he wouldn't choose someone predictable. Lena didn't know how to respond. Relax, Brielle murmured, touching her arm gently. I'm on your side. She led Lena into a fitting room filled with silks and satins and soft lighting. As dresses were lifted, measured, laid against her skin, Lena saw herself in the mirror. Not transformed, not pretended, just possible. Grayson stood outside the fitting room, hands in his pockets, gaze steady, not watching her body, but watching her breathe, like he wanted proof she wasn't going to disappear. Someone knocked at the boutique door, sharp, quick, impatient. A woman stepped inside, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. Grayson, we need to talk. Her tone suggested she was used to being obeyed. Lena didn't recognize her. Grayson did. His jaw tightened. We're not doing this today, he said without raising his voice. The woman's eyes flicked to Lena. Down, up, judging. So this is the replacement. Lena didn't speak, didn't flinch, didn't shrink. But something changed in Grayson's expression, just enough to be seen, protective, cold, final. This conversation is over, he said. The woman left without another word. The boutique was quiet again. Brielle exhaled softly, almost a laugh. Oh, this weekend is going to be fun. The boutique settled into a stillness after the door clicked shut. The air held the faint scent of jasmine and steam from freshly pressed gowns. Lena stood in front of the mirror, the newest dress draped across her frame, deep green satin, smooth as water, catching the light like quiet magic. Brielle pinned Lena's hair up loosely, studying her reflection with a careful eye. You don't have to become someone else, Brielle said softly. You just have to let people see what's already there. Lena didn't know what that meant. She wasn't used to being seen. The fitting team returned with jewelry boxes lined in velvet. The pieces were elegant, understated, not the showy diamonds she expected, a single strand of pearls, gold earrings shaped like teardrops, a bracelet that looked delicate but weighed more than it should. These belong to our mother, Brielle said. Lena froze. I can't wear... Yes, you can. Brielle's voice was gentle but firm. Grayson chose you for a reason. I trust his judgment. The words landed heavy. Not flattering, not light, but real. Grayson waited by the reception counter, his posture straight, his attention distant. He wasn't restless, just deep in thought, like a man who always held more inside than he let out. When Lena stepped out, Brielle didn't announce her. She didn't have to. Grayson lifted his eyes. The world did not stop. The lights did not dim. No one gasped, but something shifted in his gaze. Still, quiet, struck. Not desire, recognition. He had seen her before, long before today, even if she didn't remember. He stepped closer, his voice low. We leave tomorrow morning, early. Lena nodded. Wear something comfortable for the flight, he added. It was a simple sentence, but the warmth in it surprised her. Outside, the evening was soft and cool. Streetlights reflected on the wet pavement. The city hummed with ordinary life, unaware of the change unfolding. The car door opened. Grayson didn't speak on the ride back. He didn't need to. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was waiting. When they reached her apartment building, the driver got out to open the door, but Grayson spoke quietly. I'll walk her up. Lena wanted to tell him it wasn't necessary. that this neighborhood wasn't dangerous, that she'd walked these steps 1,000 times alone, but something in his expression stopped her. Not arrogance, not control, respect. They climbed the narrow stairwell, one step at a time, the light flickering overhead. Lena's key slipped slightly in her fingers as she unlocked the door. She hesitated before turning. "Why me?" she asked, not accusing, just tired, just honest. Grayson stood still. A beat. 2. "You don't look at people for what they can give you," he said. "You look at them as they are." It wasn't an answer, but it was the truth. He stepped back. "Get some rest." She nodded. He didn't move immediately. Neither did she. Then he left, the stairwell echoing behind him. Inside her apartment, her brother slept on the pull-out couch, breathing softly, a blanket rising and falling with his chest. Lena knelt beside him, brushing a hand over his hair. She didn't feel like someone stepping into a fairy tale. She felt like someone stepping into a storm. And storms, she had learned, could change landscapes. The next morning began before the sun. Lena's alarm didn't need to ring. She had barely slept. She moved quietly through the small apartment, careful not to wake her brother. She brewed instant coffee, held the warm cup to steady her hands, and looked at the envelope on the table. She was stepping into something she could not undo. At 6 on the dot, the car arrived. No announcement, no horn, just presence. Lena locked the door behind her and followed the driver downstairs. The air was chilled with dawn, soft and colorless. When she slid into the back seat, Grayson was already there. He didn't look tired or hurried, just composed, like a man built out of stillness. They didn't speak. Silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was simply the space they existed in together. The plane was private but not extravagant. Clean lines, cool gray interior. 2 flight attendants greeted them quietly. Lena sat beside the window, fingers intertwined in her lap. As the jet lifted off, the city slipped away beneath them, shrinking into patterns of light and distance. Lena watched it fade, wondering if she would return as the same person. Halfway through the flight, Brielle slid into the seat across from her. "You're doing fine," she said. Lena hadn't said a word since takeoff. Brielle leaned forward. "Tonight is simple. It's a fundraiser at the Lakeshore Pavilion. People will talk to you. They'll try to figure out who you are. You don't need to prove anything. Just listen. And stay close to my brother." Lena nodded. "Don't worry about fitting in," Brielle added. "Most of them are pretending too." The city they landed in felt different, brighter, sharp-edged. The Lakeshore Pavilion rose like glass grown from the water itself, modern, transparent, gleaming under a pale sun. Inside, chandeliers dripped light. Music floated through the air, soft and expensive. Guests wore gowns that flowed like stories and suits that fit like armor. Camera flashes flickered like sparks. Lena stood at Grayson's side, her hand resting lightly on his arm, just as she had practiced. People greeted him immediately. A board member, a philanthropist, a senator's wife. Their smiles were polished, their laughter airy, their eyes sharp. "And who is this?" someone asked, turning toward Lena. Grayson did not hesitate. "My wife," he said. The word landed like a stone dropped in water, rippling, spreading, impossible to ignore. Lena felt heat rise under her skin, but she did not lower her gaze. She met eyes. She shook hands. She spoke simply and without decoration. She didn't try to impress. People watched her the way one studies a painting that doesn't immediately reveal itself. But the room shifted only when she walked away for a moment to retrieve her clutch from a chair. A voice, low and familiar, stopped her. "Lena?" She turned. A waiter stood there, holding a silver tray. He wore the same uniform she used to wear. She recognized him before he smiled. "Didn't expect to see you here," he said softly. "Guess we both moved up." She opened her mouth to explain, but his eyes flicked to her gown, to her jewelry, to Grayson on the far side of the room. Understanding settled. "You're his wife," he said. The words weren't accusatory, but they were not a question. Lena didn't get the chance to respond. Someone else had turned, a cluster of guests, watching. A woman's lips curled. I knew I recognized her. She's staff. She cleaned our suite last month. Laughter, quiet and sharp, followed. Lena didn't move, didn't speak, but Grayson did. He crossed the room with steady steps, placing his hand at the small of her back, not possessive, supportive. "She is my wife," he said again, voice calm enough to draw silence, "and she belongs anywhere I stand." No one laughed after that. The orchestra continued, conversations resumed, but the air had changed. Lena breathed in slowly, grounding herself, not because the room respected her now, but because he had chosen to, and that somehow felt heavier than the diamonds on her wrist. The car ride back to the hotel was quiet. The night outside glowed with city lights, but inside the car everything felt muted. Lena kept her hands folded in her lap, her breathing steady. Grayson looked forward, his expression unreadable. When they reached the penthouse suite, the door closed softly behind them. The silence between them didn't feel cold, only heavy with things unsaid. Grayson walked to the table and placed a leather folder down, the same one from before. He opened it slowly, as if the ritual mattered. "There are boundaries we should be clear on," he said. Lena nodded once. He didn't sit. He stayed standing, hands resting lightly on the folder. "During the weekend," he began, "we will present ourselves as a married couple. That means shared presence, shared space, shared attention." Lena met his eyes. "I understand." He studied her for a moment, as if confirming she truly did. "There are 3 rules," he continued. His voice was even, but not cold, measured, careful. "First, no discussing personal history with others. They will ask. They always ask. You don't owe them anything." Lena nodded again. "Second, if you need space, you take it. If I need space, I take it. Neither of us forces the other into emotional display." Silence followed that one. Not avoidance, recognition. They were 2 people who had learned to survive quietly. "And the last rule," he said, his tone shifting just slightly, "no intimacy unless both agree. Explicitly. Not suggested, not implied, not taken, spoken, clear." Lena did not look away. "All right." His gaze held hers for just a moment longer than necessary, and then he closed the folder. "This arrangement ends Sunday evening," he said. "After that, you return to your life. I return to mine. No obligations." Lena felt something move in her chest, not disappointment, not relief. Something quieter, something that didn't have a name yet. "Understood," she said. The room was still, the city lights reflected in the windows like distant constellations. 2 separate lives sharing the same space for reasons neither had voiced. Grayson stepped away first, loosening his tie. "You should rest," he said. Lena nodded and walked toward the guest suite. She paused in the doorway, hand resting lightly on the frame. "Good night," she said. It wasn't formal, it wasn't intimate, just real. Grayson looked up. "Good night, Lena." She closed the door behind her. The room was quiet, but her heartbeat was not. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of the city below. The rules were clear. The time was limited. The lines were drawn. But lines can blur, and weekends can change lives. Morning came with pale light slipping between the curtains. Lena was ready before the sun fully rose, her bag small enough to hold in one hand. She didn't own much, which made leaving easy and difficult all at once. The hallway outside the penthouse was silent when she stepped out. Grayson was already by the elevator, coat on, hair still slightly undone from sleep. He looked like someone who never rushed, even when time mattered. "Ready?" he asked. Lena nodded. They rode down in silence, the elevator gliding smoothly, the city waking below. Outside, the car waited, engine quiet. The streets were still, washed in blue morning. The airport wasn't crowded. There was no rushing, no announcements, no lines. Just a private hangar, a small crew, and the sound of jet engines humming low. Inside the plane, everything was calm. Gray leather seats, warm lighting, soft humming ventilation. Lena took the window seat again. She placed her hands together to keep them still. When the plane lifted off, the city fell away beneath them, shrinking into patterns of streets and light. Clouds gathered around them, soft and white, like another world. Grayson sat across from her, reading something on a tablet, not ignoring her, simply existing beside her in quiet. Brielle appeared from the back cabin with 2 cups of tea. "Here," she said, placing one in front of Lena. "Chamomile, helps with nerves." "Don't worry. Grayson pretends he can't tell when people are anxious, but he can. He just refuses to make it worse." Grayson didn't look up. Brielle smiled like that proved her point. She slid into the seat beside Lena. "Tonight is the easy part," Brielle said. "Meals, polite conversation, smiling at people who think they know everything." Lena listened. "The hard part," Brielle continued, "is not letting them decide who you are. They will try. They always do." Lena looked down at the tea. The steam rose gently, a soft ribbon. "I don't know if I belong there," she admitted. Brielle leaned back. "Most people in rooms like that don't belong. They're just better at pretending." Lena didn't argue. The jet touched down in Napa under late morning sunlight. The air smelled different here, warm, green, a quiet luxury of its own. Vineyards spread out like soft waves of gold and earth. The estate where the weekend events would be held rested on a hill, glass and stone surrounded by endless fields of vines. The car drove up the winding road, each turn revealing a view more unreal than the last. Lena sat straight, hands steady now, eyes open. The estate entrance was framed by tall cypress trees. The doors opened before they reached them. Staff waited. Guests arrived in sleek cars. Laughter floated on the breeze. Grayson stepped out first. Then he offered his hand, not as a command, but as invitation. Lena placed her hand in his. They walked forward together, not speaking but aligned. The first eyes turned toward them. The weekend had begun. The estate seemed to breathe with the afternoon sun. Golden light washed over the stone terraces and glass walls, making everything look soft and impossibly far from the world Lena knew. Musicians played something quiet near the garden entrance, a melody carried by warm air and trimmed roses. Guests gathered in clusters across the lawn. Linen suits, silk dresses, laughter that never quite reached the eyes. Wine glasses caught sunlight like small stars. Lena walked beside Grayson, her hand resting lightly along his arm. Their steps matched without effort. She didn't look overwhelmed. She didn't look lost. She just moved through the space with quiet steadiness. And people noticed. A woman approached first, silver hair swept into a graceful knot, pearls resting delicately at her collarbone. "So this is the wife," she said, smiling. Lena smiled back, soft, polite. "Yes," Grayson said. The woman's gaze stayed on Lena a moment longer, not judgment, curiosity. "Well," she said, lifting a glass, "welcome to the circle. You'll find we talk too loudly, drink too much, and say very little we mean." She floated back into the gathering like a drifting feather. Lena exhaled slowly. Grayson leaned closer, just enough so only she could hear. "You handled that well." Lena didn't respond. She didn't need to. Dinner was hosted on the West Terrace, a long table stretched beneath string lights woven through olive trees. The sunset painted the sky in soft streaks of peach and rose. Glassware glimmered. Conversations layered over one another, small stories and larger rumors blending into background hum. Lena answered questions when asked. Simple, steady answers, each one shaped with care. "How did you two meet?" someone asked. For the first time, Grayson spoke before she did. "She mispronounced my name," he said. Soft laughter, warm, Easy. Lena glanced at him. That wasn't what happened, but it was kind. As the evening deepened, the atmosphere changed. Candles lit. The sky darkened to velvet. The music softened even further, something slow and full. Lena felt the weight of everyone watching, not constantly, but in small glances, as if waiting to see whether she would make a mistake, reveal something, crack the illusion. But the illusion was not fragile, because she was not pretending to be confident. She was simply choosing not to disappear. Later, she stepped away from the table, walking toward the edge of the terrace where the vineyard stretched into night. Cicadas hummed. Leaves rustled in the faint breeze. She closed her eyes for a moment. Footsteps approached. Grayson stopped beside her, silent. They stood together, looking out at the dark rows of vines, the faint shimmer of wine glasses behind them, the murmured conversations fading into distance. "You're doing more than you know," he said. Lena didn't ask what he meant. The night held its breath between them. Then, voices from behind. Laughter, new arrivals, and among them, a voice she didn't recognize, but felt. Warm, charming, too smooth. "Grayson, you didn't tell me you brought company." Lena turned. A man stepped into view, tall, with a smile that knew too much. Adrian Cole. His eyes moved to Lena, and something sharper than recognition flickered there. "Oh," he said quietly. "So this is the wife." Nothing about the moment was loud, but a shift had happened, one that would not go back. Adrian stepped closer, his smile easy, his posture relaxed, but his eyes held something that didn't match the warmth in his voice. He offered his hand to Lena, palm up, as though greeting royalty. She placed her hand in his out of politeness, and his fingers closed just a fraction too long before letting go. "You must be exhausted," Adrian said lightly. "The hail circles can be overwhelming to new faces." Lena didn't react. "I'm managing." Grayson's expression didn't change, but the shift in his stance was small and deliberate. He was no longer simply standing beside her. He was standing with her. Adrian noticed. His smile deepened. "Impressive," he murmured, eyes still on Lena. "Most people fold their first time here." She didn't fold. She didn't look away. She simply breathed. And that seemed to be enough to make Adrian study her more closely than before. Later that evening, after the dinner had ended and the guests dispersed into smaller conversations, Lena excused herself to step inside for a moment of quiet. The hall was dim, lined with photographs of vineyards through the seasons, all amber and green in memory. She stood alone for a breath. Then she heard footsteps behind her. Adrian again. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed loosely, voice low. "You don't belong here." Not cruel, simply stating something he wanted to see land as truth. Lena didn't turn. "And yet here I am." "That's what I find interesting," Adrian said. "Grayson is calculated, precise. He doesn't take risks he can't manage. He doesn't make sentimental choices. So tell me, why you?" Lena faced him. The question had weight, more weight than curiosity. "You should ask him," she said. "Oh, I have," Adrian replied softly, "long before you arrived." The hallway felt narrower, though neither moved. "Be careful," Adrian continued. "People at this level don't bring someone into their life without a reason, especially him." Lena's heartbeat steadied rather than quickened. "I know," she said. Adrian's eyes narrowed, not in anger, in calculation. He realized then that Lena was not intimidated. He hadn't expected that. She returned to the terrace. The evening continued. The music played. Conversations rose and fell like tidewater. But Grayson's attention shifted, barely noticeable to others. He was watching the edges of the room now, watching Adrian, watching what might follow. Brielle approached Lena from behind and touched her arm. "Walk with me," Brielle said. They moved toward the garden pathway lit by lanterns, the vines stretching into soft darkness. "He was testing you," Brielle said. Lena didn't ask who. They both knew. "And you didn't break," Brielle added. They walked a few more steps before Brielle spoke again. "Adrian used to be closer to my brother. Trusted, respected. Now, less so." "Why?" Lena asked. Brielle looked out at the vineyard instead of answering. Loyalty shifts fast among people who chase power. The lantern light flickered across her features. "But loyalty built on something real?" Brielle continued. "That doesn't move." Lena understood something then. This weekend wasn't just a performance. It was a boundary line, a declaration, a test of Grayson, of Lena, of all the eyes watching. When they returned to the terrace, Grayson was still standing where she had left him. His gaze found hers immediately, as if he had been waiting for her to return. No words passed between them, but something had been claimed. Not ownership, alignment. The estate quieted as the night deepened. Guests drifted to guest rooms, laughter fading into corridors and doorways. The vineyard lay dark and endless beyond the terrace, rows of vines under a navy sky. Lena stepped outside, needing fresh air. Lantern light flickered along the stone balcony, the breeze carrying the faint scent of earth and ripe grapes. She rested her hands on the cool railing and breathed slowly. Footsteps approached, familiar in rhythm. Grayson joined her, stopping just beside her, not too close, not distant. Their silence fit together easily. "The first day is done," he said quietly. Lena nodded. "It didn't go how I thought it would." "Most things don't," he replied. The vineyard wind brushed past them, gentle, whisper-soft. Lena looked at him then, really looked. Not at the suit or the posture or the collected calm, but the tension behind his eyes, the quiet exhaustion, the isolation. "You don't like being here," she said. He didn't pretend otherwise. "No." "Then why keep coming?" she asked. Grayson hesitated, not because he didn't know the answer, but because saying it was heavier than holding it. "My mother loved this place," he said. "She believed things grew better here, not just vines, people." Lena's voice softened. "She sounds kind." "She was," he said. His jaw tightened. "Kindness is expensive in this world." Lena turned back to the vineyard. She understood that in her own life, too. After a moment, she spoke again. What happened to her? Grayson's breath slowed. His voice lowered, not guarded, not cold, just fragile. "She got sick, and the people who claimed to care disappeared, one by one, except Adrian. He stayed, and then later, he left too. There were no tears. Grief this old didn't spill out. It settled deep. Lena didn't touch him. She didn't reach for his hand. She didn't speak words meant to soothe. She simply stood beside him, staying. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was understood. Inside, music played faintly, one last song before the night ended, a slow melody, soft and distant, the kind that made remembering unavoidable. Lena spoke first this time. "You asked me here for more than to play a role." She didn't say it like accusation, just truth. Grayson didn't deny it. "When you cleaned the penthouse," he said, "you looked at the space like it was a place to be cared for, not envied." Lena listened. "Everyone wants something from me," he continued. "Everyone expects something, a transaction, a gain, a future. You didn't look at me like that." She didn't say anything, but her breath caught. Grayson's voice dropped lower, quiet like confession. "I didn't choose you for what you could pretend to be. I chose you because you don't pretend." The night held still. Lena's pulse thudded softly in her wrist. Her eyes lifted to his. There were no rules written for this part. The music inside faded. The vineyard wind slipped between them. He stepped forward, not touching, just close enough that she felt the warmth of him. Not possession, not control, something gentler, something waiting. There was a moment, small, suspended, where a single inch would have changed everything. But they didn't cross it. Not yet. Grayson exhaled, steady and slow. "Good night, Lena." She whispered it back. They walked away from each other, but something followed them into the night. Morning broke clear and bright over the valley, sunlight spilling across the vineyard like gold poured from a bowl. The estate came alive slowly, quiet footsteps, breakfast trays, coffee steam rising into cool air. Lena and Grayson joined the others on the terrace for a late brunch. Conversations fluttered across the tables, deals being hinted at, alliances being studied, smiles worn polished and smooth. Lena spoke little. She didn't need to. Her presence beside Grayson said enough. But Adrian watched. Not openly, not aggressively. Just enough to suggest he was waiting for a moment. When brunch ended, guests wandered the grounds for vineyard tours. Grayson was drawn away by a board member, and Brielle drifted toward the gardens, chatting with someone she recognized. Lena stood alone beneath an arch of climbing roses when Adrian approached. He did not smile this time. "Grayson guards his losses," Adrian said quietly. "He holds them close. Tighter than most hold their victories." Lena didn't answer. Adrian stepped closer, not threatening, but undeniable. "He didn't tell you the whole truth. He never does. You think this is about convenience, or loneliness, or charity?" His head tilted. "It isn't." Lena's fingers curled lightly at her side. "Then what is it about?" Adrian's gaze sharpened. "Control." He let the word hang. He needed someone he could bring into this world who owed him everything. Someone with no social ties here, no power base, no voice. Someone whose silence could be purchased. His voice was soft, almost gentle. "And you fit that perfectly." Lena didn't flinch, because something in his tone revealed too much. This wasn't about her. This was about resentment. "Why tell me this?" she asked. Adrian smiled then, a small, tired thing. "Because loyalty and love are not the same. One can blind you to the truth. The other forces you to see it." His eyes held hers. "Do you know which one is happening to you?" The question didn't sting. It landed like a stone dropped into still water, deep, echoing. Lena didn't answer. He didn't wait for one. He stepped back, hands in his pockets, posture relaxed once again. "Be careful, Lena," he said. "A cage gilded in gold is still a cage." He walked away. Lena remained still long after his footsteps faded, not shaken, not convinced, just thinking. The vines rustled softly in the breeze. A hummingbird hovered near a rose, wings a blur of bright motion. She breathed. Then she turned, expecting quiet. Instead, Grayson was standing near the corner of the terrace watching her, not angry, not suspicious, but seeing her, really seeing. She didn't explain what Adrian had said. He didn't ask. The silence between them was heavier now, not distance, not fracture, weight, something shifting, something approaching, something inevitable. Night settled gently over the vineyard. Lanterns glowed along the pathways. The sky stretched wide and dark, full of quiet stars. Guests lingered in the main hall, the hum of conversation low and warm. But Lena did not stay inside. She walked alone along the vineyard rows, the earth soft beneath her shoes. Her mind was still, not racing, just sifting. She did not hear Grayson approach, but she felt the shift when he stopped beside her. Neither spoke at first. The vines rustled softly, like the night was listening. Grayson's voice was low. "Adrian spoke to you." It wasn't a question. "Yes," Lena said. A long silence followed. "What did he tell you?" Grayson asked. "That you chose me because I was easy to control, because I have nothing." Grayson didn't move. He didn't react. He only breathed in once, slow, as though steadying himself. "And do you believe that?" he asked. Lena looked out over the vineyard, endless and dark. "No," she said. Something inside him eased, but only slightly. "Then why does it matter?" he asked. "Because I need to understand," Lena replied quietly. "I need to know the truth, the real reason, not the one written in a contract." The lantern light caught the side of his face, sharp angles, shadows, a man built out of quiet battles. He turned and began walking. Lena followed. They stopped before a storage barn near the lower fields, old wood, weather-worn, unused. He opened the door. Inside, dust floated in beams of moonlight. Crates and shelves covered in canvas. Tools hung from the walls, but one wall held photographs. Lena stepped closer. Not portraits, not money, not power. Memories. A small restaurant booth. 2 people laughing. A child sitting beside a diner window swinging her legs. A woman serving coffee with a tired smile but warm eyes. Lena stared. She knew that place. She had wiped those counters, scrubbed those tables, watched the same woman bring plates to customers with hands that trembled from overwork. She lifted her gaze to Grayson. "I know this diner," she whispered. "My mother worked there," he said. The world went very quiet. "She worked there when you came in with your brother," Grayson continued. "You were young, smaller than you are now. You ordered one meal. You both shared it." Lena felt something tighten in her chest, memory soft, blurry, but real. "My mother noticed," Grayson said. "She noticed the way you gave him the bigger half, every time." The air felt full and heavy. "One night," he continued, "my mother followed you outside. She saw you waiting under the awning for the rain to stop. She offered you an umbrella. You refused. You said you didn't want to break it." Lena's breath trembled. "People don't forget kindness," Grayson said quietly. "Not real kindness, not the kind that costs something." Lena didn't speak. "She kept a picture of that night," he said, "of the 2 of you, because it reminded her that goodness still existed in the world, even in hardship." He pointed to a photo pinned near the center. Lena stepped closer. There it was, her younger self. Her brother, smaller, leaning on her shoulder, the rain behind them. Her holding a paper bag of leftovers she hadn't expected. She didn't remember someone taking it, but she remembered the moment. Grayson's voice lowered. "When she was dying, she asked me to remember people who gave without expecting. People who loved gently. People who didn't take more than they needed." Lena's throat tightened. "When I saw you in the hotel," he said, "I remembered." There was no performance in his voice, no rehearsed speech, just truth stripped bare. "You weren't convenient," he said. "You were familiar and real, and everything in my life stopped being real a long time ago." Lena's eyes filled, not with tears she tried to hide, but with the quiet ache of being seen. She turned toward him, the soft lamp glow catching the faint tremor of breath between them. "You should have told me," she whispered. "I didn't know how," he answered. They stood there, the past and present pressed together, the night holding still around them. No music, no applause, no audience, just 2 lives that had crossed once in hunger and once in need, finding each other again in a place neither expected. Lena stepped closer, not touching him, but closing the space. Grayson exhaled, slow, unarmored. The distance between them was no longer guarded. It was chosen. The vineyard was quiet by the time they walked back toward the main house. The night had grown cooler, carrying the faint scent of lavender from the garden beds. Lanterns flickered along the stone path, their light soft and gold. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Something had settled between them, something that didn't require explanation or defensiveness or caution. At the edge of the terrace, Grayson stopped. He looked out over the dark stretch of vines, the moon resting low in the sky. Lena stood beside him, her hands lightly clasped, breathing slow. "You shouldn't have had to remember me for this," Lena said quietly, eyes still on the vineyard. He turned to her. "I didn't remember you," Because I needed something. I remembered you because I couldn't forget." The night held still. Lena lifted her gaze to him. There was no disbelief, no shock, just quiet recognition of something that had been unfolding long before either of them realized it. "People don't usually see me," she said. "Not really." Grayson's expression didn't change, but his voice softened. "I saw you long before you saw me." Wind moved between them, stirring the loose strands of hair at her cheeks. Lena slowly reached up to tuck one behind her ear, and her hand paused halfway, fingers hovering in the space between them. Grayson didn't move. He didn't take. He didn't lead. He simply waited. Lena closed the distance. Not with force, not with hesitation, just with the quiet certainty of someone choosing a moment fully. Her hand rested lightly against his jaw, warm against the cool night air. Grayson let out a slow breath and his eyes lowered, not in command, but in surrender. She rose onto her toes, their foreheads touching first. The smallest contact, soft, steady, real. When their lips met, it wasn't urgent. It wasn't hungry. It was slow. A beginning, not a taking. His hands didn't grip her. They settled gently at her waist, like he was holding something fragile and valuable, something he didn't believe he deserved but would never harm. Lena's fingers curled at the back of his neck, not pulling him closer, just resting there, feeling him breathe. The night didn't rush around them. The world didn't spin. There were no fireworks. Just two people who had been tired for too long, finally finding a place to rest. When the kiss ended, they didn't step back. They stayed close, breaths mingling, their foreheads leaning together again. A quiet that felt like safety settled over them. Grayson's voice was barely above a whisper. "Lena." She didn't answer with words. She just held him there, in that stillness. After a moment, he spoke again. "This changes things." Lena nodded. "I know. We only promised the weekend," he said. "I know," she repeated, softer. His thumb brushed lightly along her side, as though memorizing the moment before it could pass. "But I don't want this to end on Sunday," she said. Grayson closed his eyes for a second, just one, and when he opened them again, the guard he always carried was gone. "I don't either," he said. The lantern flames flickered. Footsteps sounded in the distance, someone crossing the terrace inside. The spell didn't break, but the night reminded them time was still moving. Grayson lowered his hand, just enough to separate the moment from what came next. "Let's go inside," he said. Lena nodded, but before either of them could take a step, a shout carried from the house, not joyful, not casual, urgent. Brielle's voice. "Grayson." They turned. A phone screen glowed bright in her hand. Her face was pale, shaken. She held the screen toward them. The headline was sharp, bold, inevitable. "Billionaire's secret wife exposed." Maid from Chicago identified a photograph beneath it. Lena, in uniform, carrying her cleaning cart down the hotel hallway. The weekend had just shattered. The screen's glow cut through the darkness, harsh and unkind. The headline stared back like something alive, something already spreading. Lena didn't speak. She didn't breathe. For a moment the world narrowed to a single, sharp point. Grayson stepped forward, steady, unhurried, taking the phone from Brielle's hand. His jaw tightened, not in shock, but in recognition. This was an attack, calculated, timed. Adrian. Lena knew it without being told. Voices rose behind them as the news reached the rest of the guests. Whispering, rustling, the slow ripple of attention moving like wind across tall grass. Brielle touched Lena's arm, not to guide her, not to shield her, but to let her know she wasn't alone. Grayson lifted his head. His voice was calm, too calm. Inside. Now. They moved quickly, through back corridors, away from the terrace and the cluster of staring eyes. The estate seemed to close around them, the halls dim and tight with silence. Inside the private lounge, the door shut with a soft click. Lena stood still in the center of the room. Her hands were open, empty. She didn't tremble. She didn't collapse. She just stood there. Grayson faced her. The distance between them felt different now, not emotional, but dangerous. The kind of space that comes before a storm hits. "You're not leaving," he said. It wasn't a command. It was a decision. Lena met his eyes, steady, unbroken. "Someone did this on purpose," she said. "Yes." His voice was a blade. "And I know who." The room held its breath. Brielle looked between them, her expression shifting from fear to something sharper. Resolve. "What happens now?" she asked. Grayson stepped closer to Lena, not touching, not crowding, just anchoring. "This isn't over," he said. "Not for us." Outside, the estate buzzed, rumors spreading, cameras waiting, lines being drawn. Inside, the three of them stood together. But this was no longer a performance, no contract, no borrowed identity. The truth was out now, and truth changes everything. Lena exhaled slowly, not in defeat, in preparation, the kind of breath taken before stepping through a door that will not open twice. The kind of breath taken before choosing a life. The wind pressed against the windows. Night gathered close. Somewhere outside, footsteps were already moving with purpose, and the story did not end. It simply shifted.